Good afternoon. So I've had a few requests to make pozole, so that's what we're gonna have for dinner today. These are the ingredients we will be needing. We will need California dried chilies. We're gonna use 2 of them. And then I have about 5 or 6 of the guajillo chili, which is this one right here. And if you like it with a little bit of kick, we're gonna put in a few of the puya chilies. They're just like, they look like serrano peppers but dried, and they're a little spicy. We're also going to use 4 bay leaves. We're going to use salt to taste. We're going to use purple hominy. You can use white hominy if you like. It's up to you. We're going to have some chicken base. We're going to be using pork stew meat and pork neck bone, and radish and cabbage for garnish. Okay, we're going to start with rehydrating our dried chilies. I have destemmed them and put them in a pot with a cup of water, and we're gonna turn on this pot and we're gonna let it boil on low heat for about, we're gonna bring it to a boil and let it boil for about 5 minutes until the chilies are very soft and rehydrated. Okay, we're gonna start with our meat. So this is the pork stew meat. It's pieces of just pork with no bone in it. And then the neck bone, of course. I prefer neck bone in my pozole because the bone gives it more flavor. It's that broth, that bone broth flavor that you want. So we're gonna add this meat all into our pot. Very carefully, there's nothing in it right now. Into the pot, we're gonna add 4 cups of water. You may need to add more depending on how much meat you're making. It's all up to you. What you want to do is make sure that all the meat is covered. I'm going to add 2 more cups of water to my pot because I want to make sure that I have enough broth in there for when the meat cooks. To this, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of salt. Okay, I also added a tablespoon of chicken bouillon, so that's my preference. You don't need to add it if you don't need to, or if you don't want to. I'm going to add my bay leaves and the rest of my... Okay, so in the pot, I forgot to mention how much meat I have. I have 2.5 pounds of pork stew meat and 3 pounds of pork bone meat. Like I said, pork bone is my preference. You can get more of the pork stew meat and less of the neck bone if you don't want so much neck bone in it. So I've added a tablespoon of chicken bouillon, my 2 tablespoons of salt, and my 4 bay leaves. We're gonna let this come to a boil. You want to cook this at a high heat because it's pork. You want to make sure that the pork cooks all the way through. So we're gonna let it boil, and we'll come back and check on it later. Okay, so while our meat is gonna boil, we're gonna cover it to speed up the process. Our chilies are all boiled up and softened. As you can see, like, they're not stiff anymore. They're very manageable. We're gonna turn off the pot and let them rest before we blend them. And while we do that, we're gonna come over here and we're gonna strain our hominy. You wanna rinse it out because you don't want this extra starch in the pot. Otherwise, it will get thick, and pozole is not a thick stew. It's a very brothy stew. So we're just gonna rinse this and let it rest until we're ready to put it in the pot. Okay, we have been cooking our meat for 2 hours already, and I'm gonna check, make sure that the meat is nice and tender. As long as your fork goes through it, this is actually falling off the bone. So you want to check the pork pieces. Those are a little tougher to cook for some reason, but as long as your fork goes through it, you're doing great. While the meat was cooking, I did go ahead and blend my chilies with the same water I cooked them in. We're going to pour our chilies in here now. And I blended them, and I also added a tablespoon of chicken bouillon, so chicken base. I'm going to give this a stir. So this is almost done. Yes, pozole takes a long time to cook, but if you've had it, you know how good it is. At this time, Okay, so I just added my hominy in here as well. So as you can see, it's in there. It's gonna cook for another half hour or so, maybe 45 minutes, depending on how fast your stove cooks. Some of these cook pretty fast. The hominy is hard, even though it's cooked right now. You need to soften it up, so you need to leave it in there. So while this cooks down, like I said, it'll be for another 30 to 45 minutes. We're gonna cover it to help it along, and I'm gonna go ahead and start dicing my radishes. Well, not dicing, I apologize. We're gonna slice them, and we're gonna julienne our cabbage. Okay, so with the radishes, we're gonna chop the ends off, and we're just gonna finely slice them. You don't want thick slices. Well, I guess this is up to you, depending on how thick you want your slices. I like them pretty small. I don't like them to be super chunky. So we're just going to slice these, and we're going to also julienne our cabbage in just a minute. All right, time to do our cabbage. I normally cut it down the middle. I wash my cabbage after I'm done dicing it. I don't like doing it before, just because sometimes you still leave it dirty and it's kind of gross. So I like getting in between. I always cut out the core, so I cut it in half and then in thirds, and then I flip it and I go sideways to cut the core. And then to make small dices or small juliennes, I just go from the back end and come in, and you want to just rock your knife back and forth, picking it up and from the back, not from the front. And this will give you nice julienne pieces. As you can see, it's not too small, it's not too big, and that's just how we prefer it, or I prefer it. You can also okay, got my cabbage all diced up and my radishes all sliced. Just gonna put them all in the serving bowl, that way it'll be ready to go. The amount of pozole that I'm making serves about 6 to 8 people. It all depends on how much you want to make, so just adjust the quantities to your size of meal, or size of family, or size of party you're serving. And then the last thing I'm going to chop up is some limes that we will be using. There is a difference between limes and lemons. Lemons are yellow, limes are green. In pozole, I always use limes. So I guess use your preference. Okay, so this cooked for 3 hours. We started cooking at 3:30 p.m. my time. It's 6:20, so it cooked about for 3 hours. So this is the final product. I'm gonna serve myself and show you guys. Obviously, you serve yourself as much as you want. And some of the broth. And there you go. Now just need to add the toppings. Alright, we're gonna add some cabbage, some radish, and we have some diced cucumbers. I like the cucumbers in it. It gives it a nice, cool, refreshing taste. And we also have my dad's special sauce. This is his recipe, so I cannot share it with you guys because he has not given me permission. But it has cucumbers and red onions in it, lime juice, and it's super spicy.